Welcome back to Broncos and Parts Garage. My name's Chris. Today I've got Christian with me for today's project. We're going to be working on my 1997 Ford F350. It's got a set of old airbags that are leaking, dry rotted, and cracked. We're going to be putting on this Airlift 5000 kit. I picked these up from Jeff's Bronco Graveyard. I'll put a link in the description below. When properly installed, it should give us our ride quality back, as well as let us haul heavier loads safer down the highway. Christian?
One more thing, guys. This kit is universal for Chevys, Dodges, and GMC trucks.
So let's get some tools to get started. So we've got the old airbag system off. We did it off camera so there wouldn't be any confusion. We went in here and kind of ground the frame down a little bit, had some surface rust. We prepped it and then painted it with this black rust preventative paint. Next thing we're gonna do is clean off the leafs, get this ready for the bracketry we're gonna have to bolt on here. But first, we're going to go over to the table and assemble the actual airbag to the top and bottom brackets. Doing this kind of prep work, just to make sure that the U-bolts that hold the brackets down are flush and everything's lined up properly. We'll do the underside off camera. Okay guys, we've got the leaf springs cleaned up. Now we're going to assemble the brackets onto the bag. And if you'll notice, they're both the same when you pull them out of the box. The top has 3 holes, the bottom has 2. We're going to start with the top. First thing you'll do is identify your roll plates. That are these. They're both the same, so you'll want to line them up over the holes like you see here. Next thing you're going to do is take the air valve. We're going to thread that in hand tight, and then we're going to turn it 1.5 turns using a 13mm wrench. Do not over tighten these. After we get that done, then I'm going to bolt on the bracket, and we'll show you that in 1 second. We've got the fitting out of the plastic bag. We're just gently going to thread this in. It came with the Teflon tape already. I'm guessing it's a tapered bolt because they don't want you to over tighten it. So we're going to go in here. That's about finger tight. I can't tighten that anymore. So let's get our wrench. Let's see, that's finger tight. So we want to go 1 turn, which would bring this all the way to about here. And then another turn would be another 90 degrees about right there. This still pivots freely. We're gonna leave that alone. Now we're gonna bolt on the top bracket. The next step would be putting this top bracket over the top roll plate, and you just set it right over the air valve. You'll take the hardware provided, make sure you have your split washer and a flat washer, and we're just gonna put these hand tight because you're gonna need to adjust this fore and aft once you get it installed in the truck. So we're going to screw this down. Again, you want to just keep these hand tight because you still want to be able to manipulate this to line everything up as best you can. You are able to have, I think, up to 5 degrees different angles between the top bracket and the lower bracket, and the airbag will still function properly. And we talked to some people at Airlift to figure all that out just to make sure before we went ahead and put it on. We did it. Now you don't have to. So let's flip this over and start working on the other side. Next thing you'll want to do is attach your lower bracket. You'll simply line that up over the 2 holes. You'll take your hardware. These have a 9/16 head, so have that wrench ready when you go to tighten these up. Again, finger tight only. And you'll probably end up using a ratcheting or open end wrench because you won't be able to get a socket in there because the leaf springs will be in the way. On our application, we're going to be using these risers, which I'll show you in a minute. Let me get this lined up. This is moving a little bit. Just take your time getting this in here. And again, finger tight only. All right, let's go get this on the leaf spring. Before you install the airbag assembly and brackets to your leaf spring, you need to determine which U-bolts you need. The kit comes with 2, and depending on your leaf pack, that will determine which size U-bolts you use. We're going to be using these long U-bolts. Because they won't fit underneath my normal spring pack, we're gonna go right underneath the helper spring. Then we're gonna take this spacer that comes with the kit. You may or may not have to use that depending on your application, but if it is a 97 Ford F350 Dually like this, you're gonna be doing it the same way. You're just gonna set this in place right here and kind of just let it sit there. Now we'll do the same thing to the other side. We've got our U-bolts in, we've got our spacers in. The next thing we'll be doing is setting the bracket in place on top. And again, you don't want to tighten anything down, just get it snug, get it in place. You'll notice that these are really tall. When we get everything bolted on, I'm gonna go back with either a hacksaw or a cutoff wheel, and I'm gonna cut off the extra threads that are sticking out of here just to clean it up. Let's get the bracket on. We're gonna get the assembly on the leafs right now. It's kind of tricky. First thing I'm gonna do is just kind of slide this bracket back and lay it down out of the way. It'll hold itself into place. Usually it's easier with 2 people, but I've got my guy holding the camera right now. So just slide this back, line it up over the hole, and kind of set it down. Next, you're gonna wanna tilt this back and just run, I don't know if you can see that, run the U-bolts back into this bracket. And you've basically got most of the job done. We're gonna line it up so it's even with on the other side, and it's basically about an 1/8 inch. This bracket is gonna be about an 1/8 inch forward of the edge of this bracket. It's not an exact science. You just wanna keep the airbag level. And remember, you need to have between 5 and 7 inches between these 2 brackets. So we're gonna use a pry bar to get it into shape and mark all our holes. We're gonna set ours at exactly 6 inches. So between the top of this plate and the bottom of that one, we will be right at 6 inches, right in the middle of their specifications. Let's get some bolts on this bottom plate. I've got the assembly in place. We've got it sitting on the U-bolts. I've got the washers that came in the kit in place, and you'll see in the instructions. We've got the nuts partially threaded on. They're 9/16. We're gonna use an open end wrench, and we're gonna use a cordless ratchet to get them down as far as we can because I don't have sockets that deep. Now, we did line up this bracket with your leaf plate, we'll call it, right here that comes from the factory. Just a smidge, maybe 1/8 of an inch in front of it. It's lined up with that on the other side. Let's tighten these down right now. And again, I'm not gonna crank these down yet until we make sure everything's lined up perfectly. And if you're wondering why we don't cut these and then keep going with the ratchet, it's just in case something goes wrong. We wanna make sure we cut these at the last. So let's go over to this side and get this one down. If I can get it in there, I should be able to. So we've got these on. I'm gonna snug these up with the 9/16 wrench. The torque spec is 16 foot-pounds, but we're gonna wait till the end to do that because I can't get my torque wrench on with a socket because the threads are too long. So we're gonna snug them down. Then I'm gonna cut these off once we get everything set up. Then we'll torque them down. So right now, we're just gonna get it so it's in place. That's pretty snug. And I'll grab close to the head of the wrench so I can't put that much torque on it. You don't wanna grab it out here. And we'll go around and do all 4 of them. And this will just kind of seat it in place. And again, if you don't want to do maximum torque, always grab near the head of the wrench. Let's do the other side. Ready? That one's very tight. We're gonna leave that alone right now. Now let's work on getting our measurements between here, the bottom plate, and the top plate. We're aiming for 6 inches. The instructions say between 5 and 7. We're gonna put it at 6. We've got the assembly in place. We're getting ready to line up to mark the holes. And as I stated earlier, you wanna keep 5 and 7 inches between these plates. It can be off to a few degrees, so this doesn't have to be perfect. It just can't exceed airless parameters. You don't wanna wreck the airbag or mess anything up when you're driving down the road. So again, between 5 and 7 inches, we're gonna shoot for 6. It might be 6 1/4 on this side to make sure we hit the frame rails. And again, I'm reiterating this. This does not have to be exactly parallel. These don't have to be perfectly parallel, but they can't be radically off. And you can read that in the instruction book. One other tip, before you mark and drill these holes, make sure there's nothing on the other side. As Christian reminded me, on the other side, obviously you're gonna have brake lines and fuel lines. You're gonna wanna move all that stuff out of the way, and it's very simple. We chose to do this on the easier side, but we will show you after we finish the other side. We've got it in place. We're using a long pry bar, and I'll put links in the description for all these tools. We're going to measure. It's easier to measure from the outside of these brackets to get your measurements. So just subtract the difference, and I don't wanna confuse you. In other words, if you need 6 inches in between here, figure it out and then measure to the outside. It's just easier for your tape measure, and I hope I'm not confusing anyone. So right now we've got 8 inches right here. Right now we're at about 6.5 inches. So what we're gonna do is, Christian's gonna pry down, we're gonna get this level, we're gonna get it into place, we're gonna mark the holes, the center of the hole with a paint pen. I don't want to use a punch right now. This is just easier for me, especially swinging the hammer around here with the camera and the pry bar. So we're going to line it up. We're going to get our measurements accurate. We're going to take the paint pen. We're going to put a dot in the middle of each one of these holes. Then we're going to do our center punches, which we'll show you on camera. But right now we're going to turn the camera off, mark these after we measure everything. All right, we've marked all 4 holes. I'm going to zoom in here and you can see that little white dot on the inside. I hope you can see it. We did it on both sides, so we got it lined up. We got our average height between 5 and 7. We went right at 6. I think it might be 6 or 6 1/4. Now we're gonna, because we only hand tighten the bracket bolts on the top, we're gonna loosen up the bracket bolts on the top, take them out and remove the bracket. That way we can drill these holes. So we're gonna do that right now. We've got the bracket removed and we've got all 4 of the holes marked. I've got one here, and there's 2 on the other side. Airlift says to keep it about 1 inch from the bottom of the frame rail, which we have right here. It's hard to tell, I guess it's a perspective. So now we're gonna get these punched and drilled and we'll go from there. So we've got all 4 holes drilled out. Here's 2 of them here. We got the other 2 on the other side. Right now we're gonna place the bracket in place. And again, you gotta make sure that you clear the air valve up here when you put the bracket in. So we're gonna turn the camera off. We're both gonna push down on this airbag and then get this back into place. What we're doing right now is screwing the bracket back in place. And when we get it adjusted, that's when we'll do the torque specs. Let's get it bolted to the frame right now. We've got the bracket bolted in. We snugged up all 4 of the bolts. Right now we're torquing them down to the 44 foot-pounds the manufacturer suggests. Christian's behind there holding it. Now some of you guys might say, hey, to get a proper torque spec, you need to hold the bolt from the backside to get the proper clamping. We agree with you. This is just easier to film it right now, so we're going to show you. And off camera, we will put a socket over here and we'll take the torque wrench to the backside. And we'll probably do a comparison just to see if it is as accurate as it should be. But right now we're going to torque it from the front. So let's get these up to 44. And we went to 45.5 and we'll leave it at that. We've got the bracket torqued down properly. We've adjusted the airbag right where we want it. We put this one in the center of the bracket. We've got our 14mm wrench. We're gonna go tighten up the bolts right here that connect the plate to the bracket. One thing you wanna know is that we couldn't find torque specs and we called the company and no one answered the phone. So we're gonna tighten those bolts on top that we showed you earlier, just till the flat water crushes. So I'm guessing it's gonna be between 16 and 25 foot-pounds. And that's what we're gonna kind of go with. You don't wanna over tighten them because they're kind of like a riv nut into the top plate. And once I get some good resistance, I'm gonna move my hand and I'm gonna get my hand up here closer to the head of the wrench as opposed to out here where you can get lots of torque. We're gonna move it up here. And right there, I'm getting good resistance. I can feel the washers are flat. We'll do the same thing to the other side. And again, you're gonna repeat these steps on the other side. So let's get this till it gets snug. And you don't want to over torque any of this stuff. So I'm going to get my hand up here and I'm just going to turn it near the head and I'm going to leave it just like that. Now I've got both the the split washers are crushed. We're going to repeat the step on the bottom off camera. I should have mentioned this sooner. Proper bag spacing from the frame, I guess side to side, not fore and aft, would be as long as you can get your hand behind this bag and the frame, you should be good. And we have plenty of room. You don't want it too far out because you don't want it rubbing your tires. But in this instance, as long as you can put your hand in between the back side and the frame, you're good to go. We're going to cut the U-bolts off right now. We'll do 2 and we'll do the other ones off camera. Keep in mind that when you back these bolts off, or excuse me, the nuts off, which you probably never will do, it will rethread those U-bolts anyway. So we'll get the other ones cut off right now. We chose 2 holes on the bumper for the airlines and the Schrader valves. We're gonna mount it in this hole, and there's another one on the other side of the hitch basket. And I'll show you on the back side what we're gonna do. Come on around here, Christian. We've got a bumper bracket that's actually not the correct bracket for this bumper, but we are going to run the airline through this hole, and then it's actually gonna go down inside that hole. So right now I'm going to leave this here. The reason why we're going through the bumper hole and not over it is because you can't have more than like a 1-inch radius. They don't want you bending this line. They don't want you kinking this line. So right now I'm going to put the washers and the nut on the Schrader valve, and we're going to tighten it up right here, and then we're going to run the line all the way back to the spring. So let's get this bolted in. We've got the line run. Now we're going to assemble it through this hole. This hole is a little bit bigger than you're supposed to use. We did not want to drill a new hole. So you're going to take the nut and you're going to thread this on almost all the way to the top. You need a lot of this Schrader valve sticking out of the bumper because you've got the other nut, and you've got the washers and the rubber grommet on there. So we're going to go to about right there. The next thing you're going to put on is one of the star washers, and that provides the bite so you can tighten this all down. Because this washer is actually a little bit smaller than that hole, I'm going to put a larger washer over that. And it will still provide a good bite. The next thing we're going to do is put our rubber grommet on there, and this is going to protect your bumper. Just like that. It's going to protect your bumper from the the nut and the washer we're putting on here. So now we've got a stainless steel spacer, and now we're going to put on the lower nut. And again, you're going to crank this up. You want to make sure you have enough of this hanging out so you can get an air chuck on there. And this one's looking really good. Now, I'm going to tighten it up right here. I'm holding it at the top because that star washer is biting into the top. I'm not going to completely crush that rubber grommet, but I'm going to get it good and tight. Yeah, that's actually, that's perfect. That's not going anywhere. Now let's run the rest of the wire to the airbag. You're supposed to run the airline through holes and channels in your frame rail and the bed. You guys know I go into great detail. So I've cut some split loom. I'm going to slide on 3 pieces right now. Anytime this makes contact with your frame or your body or the bed, I don't want it chafing through. And again, they didn't supply this, but you can buy this stuff on Amazon. I'll put a link for a roll. It's great when you're doing any type of project. The first split loom I'm going to run it through the frame rail right here, and I'm going to run it over the line. So now we've got protection against chafing from this bumper bracket. The next thing we're going to do is run this airline up through the bed rail. And I'm going to go over the gas filler tank here, or the gas filler. Okay, and I'm just going to pull this down. Now I've got another piece of split loom because I know that's going to make contact. I'm pulling this one out. And now I've got this one right here. Now we're going to zip tie this in place right here. But as you can see, we've made contact. Anywhere there's contact, I've got split loom. You want to have about 6 inches to 8 inches of extra line just for your suspension articulation, which is going to be pretty slim in this truck. The last point of contact will probably be right here. We're going to zip tie it here. And then we'll run the line over to the valve on the top. I've got a lot of extra material right here, as you can see, tucking it back in here. So we're not going to have a problem with that. What we need to do now is my hand's on top of the valve. I'm going to pull it out, and that's where we're going to have to make this cut. And you don't want to cut it with scissors. You don't want to use wire snips. What we've been doing is getting a razor, actually putting it on the drum and just hammering the razor right through it, unless you have a cleaner way to cut it. But you want it a sharp razor. You want it fast. It's got to be a perfect 90-degree angle. You can't have it at an angle. You can't pinch it. So we're going to do that right now. So we've got the cut. You can see it's nice and round. It hasn't been smashed. Here's the upper valve. It's kind of like a shark bite. We're going to slide it in there. It's going to lock in place. I'm going to put my finger on it to hold it steady, line it up, and I'm kind of doing this blind. And now I've pushed the airline in all the way. You guys can see it's snug. It's in there. Now it's just a matter of zip tying the line back in place, and we don't want any chafing, so we're going to zip tie it. Now remember, we're not going to crank this zip tie too tight, and the line is still going to be able to move inside of this split loom. Again, you don't have to do this, but you know, as you've seen all my videos, we go into like kind of extra detail. So we'll get these zip tied up, and then we'll come back and show you. We're going to get the wheels put back on, we'll lower it down, and we'll add some air. Okay guys, we've got the airbags installed, we got the wheels back on. This bad boy's on the ground for the first time in about 2 weeks. It's taken us a long time to get this video done. As most of you know, or that already subscribed to the channel, I had some health issues. So let's take this up to about 30 PSI.
There she is.
Yeah.
Go to the other side.
Go do the other side. And now I'm going to turn the light on.
4 inches of.
And I'm going to go underneath here. And you'll see in here, we got great inflation. It's not rubbing anything. It's just a fantastic install. We've got the Airlift 5000 system installed in this truck. It went off without a hitch. It's a pretty simple install. Just want to double check the routing of the airlines. I want to give a shout out to Jeff's Bronco Graveyard for having this in stock and getting it to us fairly quickly. Again, follow the directions. When your truck is empty, you want to have a minimum of 5 PSI in each bag. Other than that, it's pretty maintenance-free system. Every once in a while, I check the lines, make sure they're not chafing into anything under your truck. Chris, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, guys, it's a fairly easy install. So make sure you guys measure twice and drill once.
We'll see you next time.